morning. My name's Emma. I am the Executive Director here at Project Share. I'm just wishing you a very warm welcome. Thank you for spending your morning here with us alongside the Cumberland County Food System Alliance. We're thrilled to host you in this space and to have this community conversation about gleaning. Project Share has been gleaning since 1993. And it has been really impactful to help us live out our mission of providing healthy, nutritious food to those in our community who are in need. And so we are so excited to hear from these panelists just to continue that conversation about gleaning, its impact, best practices, and just to learn really from these experts in this field. So thank you for being here. A few housekeeping items. If you need the restroom while you're here, there's a hallway. Walk down the hallway. The restrooms are just past the kitchen. There's also some lovely snacks up here, so please feel free to help yourself. We're really looking forward to this conversation and being able to network together. At this time, I'll pass it over to Lisa, who's going to continue introductions.
Hello, thank you also for being here. I'm Lisa Maddox, I'm Project Share's Director of Development. I'm also a member of the Cumberland County Food System Alliance, which I will not say those 5 words again. It's the CCFSA. And I'm going to give you a little background on that so you know who invited you and why we're here and what we're trying to do. In July of 2017, the Partnership for Better Health, thank you Gail, Marcellus, convened a group of community stakeholders with interest in food access, hunger relief, and local food production. It coincided with the launch of then Governor Wolf's Blueprint for a Hunger-Free Pennsylvania, and the #1 goal of that was that every county or region in Pennsylvania will have a local food alliance to combat hunger by the year 2020. So the overachievers in Cumberland County in 2018 established the CCFSA. We feature a 10 to 12 person leadership team that meets quarterly and includes representatives from a variety of countywide food system partners. Several of us are in the room today, and when we go to introductions, if you are a member of the CCFSA, please also note that. With the support of the Partnership for Better Health, the Center for Land Use and Sustainability stepped in as the backbone of our organization in 2019. Our stated purpose is to support a sustainable local food system that promotes economic vitality, increases food security, promotes wellness, and advances community resilience in Cumberland County. Our guiding principles are to focus on food security, systems change, and sustainability. And now I would like to ask to go around the room. Could you please stand if you're able? Give us your name and your professional affiliation, just so we all have some degree of networking if we haven't already met or talked. And I'm going to start with Marianne.
I'm Marianne Heidig. I am with the Cumberland County Food System Alliance with the Center for Land Use and Sustainability, and I've been here for about 1.5 years in the role of program project coordinator. And thank you to the Partnership for Better Health.
Good morning and welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Gail Whitwer, Director of Health Promotion with the Partnership for Better Health and a member of the leadership team for the Cumberland County Food System Alliance, CCFSA. We're going to invent that acronym. I've been with the partnership a little over 17 and a half years, so thank you for coming.
Hi everyone, I'm Shannon. I am the Community Health Worker Supervisor at Sadler Health here in Carlisle, and I'm also part of the CCFSA. I am new to the board, so this is my first event, so I'm very excited to meet everyone.
Hi, I'm Sarah Anderson. I'm a Resource Development Assistant at SCAP. Just started a few weeks ago, so trying to get my feet wet and be a sponge and absorb all of the knowledge.
Doreen Lozano, retired teacher and community everywhere person who know half a dozen other folks in different capacities. Recently a volunteer at SPO, Shippensburg Produce and Outreach, because I've got a family connection there, so they got me.
Hi folks, my name is Ariana. I work at the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection's Office of Environmental Business. It's a mouthful.
Nice to meet you.
Hello, Brian Perry. I'm sorry, I have a few different titles because I can't seem to sit down. So I'm a consultant for nonprofits and minority businesses of color. I'm also I don't know if I'm going to be CEO or exactly what my title is going to be, but I'll say CEO for now, for a new nonprofit called the Learning Tree, the PA branch. And I'm a council member. I always forget to say that one, so I wanted to make sure I did it. Thank you for having me.
That's very sweet.
Hi everyone, my name is Sam Demusio. I'm at Dickinson College. I just started about 2 months ago. So I'm excited to be here and starting to recognize faces in the room. So thanks for the invite for sure.
So I'm going to make this brief, even if you can't believe that I can be brief. Dr. Marcel Citel, I have the privilege and pleasure of serving as the Director of Health Equity at the Partnership for Better Health, or as I like to say, Gail's Chief of Staff. Let me just say, I would be remiss to say that she's about to introduce herself, but I think one of the biggest champions for food security in the Commonwealth is sitting next to me. And what she's doing for the next generation is moving for real. So I get to sit next to her today.
How did this happen for me? Thank you. I mean, we would not exist without the partnerships, mentorship, and support from the beginning. So I'm Heidi. I'm the founder and executive director of the LEAF Project, and we're a youth agriculture organization that is all about engaging the next generation in seeing the whole food system and a sense of belonging in it. Also, I feel like Project Share has been such a leader in our state and maybe in our country in Gleaning, and so excited for you all to be having this conversation and learn from you.
I'm Eric Smith. I'm the market manager for Farmers on the Square here in Carlisle every Wednesday, and a big part of that is managing our Fresh Match program to double a lot of food access benefits, SNAP, WIC, FMNP, and I'm really trying to focus on growing that program and getting the word out in the community about it more in the next year. So.
I'm Karen Long-Earl. I'm the director of the Bureau of Food Assistance with the Department of Agriculture, and pleased to be here. And nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you
In person.
Thank you for all your assistance.
You're welcome.
Good morning. I'm Chris Connor. I'm the interim executive director at Shippensburg Produce and Outreach. I'm also a member of CCFSA. Most importantly, I'm Doreen's son-in-law.
Sadly.
I'm Barbara Hutchinson, and I'm the priest and rector at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in Shippensburg, and we run Grace Place, which is our community garden and a place that hopefully will bring the neighborhood into wholeness. Thank you.
No pressure.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Fisher. I work with Central PA Food Bank. We're super excited to be here and support the work of Gleaning and everything you guys are doing in Cumberland County. I'm here with my coordinator, Linda Gilbert.
I'll just go next. I'm Linda Gilbert with Central PA Food Bank, and we work in the food sourcing department, so we work on both sides, the retail end and the agricultural end. So this is exciting to see how much more we can really impact our communities for food insecurity. Thank you.
I'm Jeanette Haven. I'm with the YWCA here in Cumberland County. I am the development director there, so I'm here really to learn a lot more about Gleaning and how we can utilize all of the resources. I was talking to some other people earlier where I truly believe that as donation dollars and grant money goes down, all of us in the nonprofit world, we are all having to work together even more than we already have. And so that's really where my heart is. A big part of the YWCA is that eliminating racism, promoting peace. I really see that we have a lot of Alice households here in Cumberland County. So it's really a big, just personally for me, I find a very big part of my own heart reaching out to those who face food insecurity every day. So I think that that's something that I really, I'm passionate about, but I do see how it links back into YWCA work. So thanks for having me here.
Hi,
Hi, I'm Carly Aki. I formerly am the Assistant Director at the Center for Public Service at Gettysburg College, but I'm also the co-chair of the Adams County Food Policy Council. And Marianne usually crashes our meetings, so I am crashing yours. I love it.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be in such a dynamic room of great leaders. I work with the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. I'm the Commodities Program Manager. I work with a lot of different fruit and vegetable growers that we're interested in getting them to improve their business or tap into new markets. So interested to hear about how Gleaning and this awesome coalition can help with that. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Nate with Cumberland County Planning Department. I mainly work with farmland preservation right now, and as you might be aware, the two, food insecurity and preserving our farmland, are going to go hand in hand as our county continues to develop. So it's something that is very important to get both of those things working together.
You would like to know the department, we work closely with farmland preservation. They're right across the hall and we confer with them a lot.
Yeah, we've developed a really good relationship with PDA over the years, and we're trying to be a really good relationship builder going forward. It takes a lot of work to preserve farms, a lot of paperwork, as I've found out in my 8 months working with Stephanie. So that part of the job isn't as fun, but getting to go out and meet our farmers that are the backbone of this community is it's special. So.
Oh, hi. I'm the communications corner at Project Share. I will be back here videoing and taking photos. So, yeah, that's it.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Michael.
Marianne and Dale and us. It's kind of been killing you to sit here and not talk.
Lisa.
Welcome, everybody. It was fabulous for Marianne and I to just kind of step back and watch all the conversation and networking that was going on very organically. And we felt so bad that we had to interrupt to start the show. So what we're going to do, because we want to have that conversation continue, but initially we'll set the stage with having our panel experts talk about their work in Gleaning, and then we'll break out and have table conversations, but we'll get to that part when it comes. So we're going to give each panelist about 10 minutes to talk about their work, and please introduce yourself, as we all did, as we walk through the panel, and we're going to start with Natalie. I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Natalie Sinclair. I work for the Gleaning Project, which is a part of SCAP, the South Central Community Action Programs. The Gleaning Project is SCAP's collaborative non-profit effort to reduce food loss on local farms and increase food security in our communities. It started in 2009 as a community initiative. It was originally titled Adams County Gleaning Network, and it was started by Jan and Jerry Altoff. They worked under the Society of St. Andrew, which is big with gleaning, and were just doing the work on their own. They had a greenhouse that they had as their business, and then in their free time they were driving to the local farms that they knew and gathering that produce that was being wasted. And then down the road in 2013, SCAP took over. The work just became too much for Dan and Jerry. There's obviously so much food that needs saving, so SCAP took over with the support of the Adams County Food Policy Council, which I am now very happy to be a part of. Our mission is to make good use of agricultural excess, to reduce food insecurity and improve community health, and to connect our community. We strive for a more equitable and sustainable food system, and we envision a South Central PA where farmers are supported, the local food economy is thriving, and everyone can access food and lead a healthy and active lifestyle. I got started at the Gleaning Project during my college career at Gettysburg College. In my senior year, I majored in sociology, and I had 2 minors in business, and then my other minor was women, gender, and sexuality studies. And through my WIGS program, we had to take a practicum course where everyone in the class was paired with a local organization and had to volunteer their time throughout the semester and be involved. And I just absolutely fell in love with the work. It was a walk from the college to get there. I was there every week. I got to meet the volunteers. You get to actually interact with the people we're serving. You get to see the impact of having firsthand. And I was so happy there. And it's very rarely that I've like loved a job, and that for me to be like randomly placed there and all work out so well has been amazing. So in May of 2023, I graduated from Gettysburg and started an AmeriCorps Vista internship with Gettysburg College and the Gleaning Project. So I was volunteering my senior year and then started an internship, and then that August I started as the Gleaning Assistant Coordinator, so was an actual employee at that point. And then just last month I stepped up as the director of the Gleaning Project because Matthew Moser, our previous director, now works with the Central PA Food Bank, and I'm very happy for them to have him. A little hurt, but it's okay. So that is my involvement with cleaning. To give some numbers from last year, in 2023, both Franklin and Adams County had a total of 207 donors that were able to provide 1,245,292 pounds of produce.
Wow.
All just last year. The assigned value for that, if money sounds better to you, is $1,856,573. And all of that food was served 14,320 unique individuals in both Adams and Franklin County. And we were supported by 270 volunteers because we are a very 4 or 5 person staff depending on the season. So everything we do is supported by our volunteers, and we could not do anything without them. So both of our counties have a walk-in refrigerator unit, a free produce stand that anyone can come up to and help themselves to produce. Franklin County, their produce stand is entirely outside, whereas Adams County, it's half inside, half outside. Both have their restraints when it comes to the seasons and the weather, but we do what we can to get by. We also each have a box truck in both counties. One has a lift gate, one does not. The one without a lift gate, that county has a forklift, but then the other county doesn't have a forklift. So our supplies are kind of spread thin throughout the counties, but we make it work in each one. We have weekly deliveries and pickups with certain farms in each county, as well as farms that reach out to us when they have that excess produce. So there are certain farms that we are scheduled to go to every week, and we get roughly 10,000 pounds a week from those farms. So that number is consistently coming in, as well as the farms that will call us when they just have excess, or backyard gardeners come and drop off produce to us. So we can take kind of a lot of donations if it's 40,000 a month, and we are able to turn that produce around pretty quickly. We pick it up from the farm, put it in our walk-in, we weigh it, and then it immediately goes outside to our produce stand. There's very little time of it sitting in the walk-in because we want to immediately get it to the people so that they can take it home and eat it. There are some challenges that we face include storage. We hold as much as we can, but there's only so much you can hold in a walk-in refrigerator unit, and then our SCAP facilities are obviously limited. We can't just expand indefinitely. I wish we could, but we cannot. And then also finances. The Gleaning Project is not government funded, so we have some flexibility when it comes to what we can actually spend our money on, but we often feel the constraints of relying on private donors. Thankfully, we are part of the Giving Spree. If you are aware of that in Adams County, it's the community fund every year. People promote their organization, and SCAP is under the Giving Spree, so we get direct donations every year in November from the community to keep doing our work. I guess to talk about what works well at SCAP and at Gleaning is the fact that we are getting any produce off of the farms and into the hands and mouths of so many individuals. The passion of the volunteers, employees, farmers, and clients are all what drives that change. I think for us, it might seem pretty simple, like there is produce, there is people who need to eat. It's obvious, but you need to have that passion and that understanding from all the people involved to see that positive impact and to want to continue pursuing it. There are a lot of benefits for farmers when it comes to gleaning. they can get rid of their seconds more easily to provide more storage for themselves to have the stuff that they're actually selling at their markets. It also saves them money. They can get a tax write-off at the end of the year because they're providing this produce. It also saves them labor. We often ourselves go out into the fields and clean the produce ourselves, so their laborers don't have to pick that just for it not to sell. We do the work ourselves when we can. And then they also just have a general feel good about feeding their community. Every farmer that I have met and talked to, like, they see all the food that goes to waste. They know it better than anyone else, and so that the fact that they can see their excess directly feeding their community, like, just makes them feel good, and that's what makes them work with us year after year.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
We promote our farmers whenever we can. Whenever we are in the fields gleaning, we always ask our volunteers to check out the markets that they have on the farms and to directly financially support the farmers, as well as when we're at the produce stands, people are always thrilled to hear how local the produce is and where they can find it. And yeah, we are currently distributing at both of our SCAP locations, so we have that free produce stand that anyone can come to and help themselves to produce Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and Fridays in the summertime when we have more produce. This produce stand, there is no requirements. There's no need to sign in. You don't have to prove income or anything. You can just come to the stand, help yourself to the produce that there is. We ask that you try to be mindful and leave some for the other families, kind of thing, but if you can use the produce, then take it, because that's what it's there for. Aside from those free produce stands, we also deliver to various community partners. So either the staff ourselves deliver to these community partners, such as senior centers, elementary schools, equal housing opportunities, food banks, food pantries, etc. And then we also have countless food movers, as we call them. They are volunteers who come to us every week and they fill their own personal cars with the produce, usually 100+ pounds, and they'll drive to the community partner and drop it off in their free time. And without those people, we couldn't support nearly as many partners because we only have 2 cars and 2 people, and there's only so much we can deliver ourselves. Yeah, I guess that's about all. I'm really thankful to be working with the Gleaning Project. It's definitely like, I guess when I went to college and I was a sociology major and everyone's like, what are you gonna do with sociology? And I'm just like, I wanna work for a nonprofit and I wanna help people. And SCAP and Gleaning is like the most direct. You're picking up the produce from the farm, you are driving it to SCAP, you are handing it to the people, you're providing them recipes and information about the produce, because you can't just give them produce and say good luck. You gotta teach them about cooking it and how to preserve it, and just to make those connections and to feel the impact and the gratitude from the community is like a beautiful thing that brings me back every single day. So thank you.
We'll hold the questions till the end after we hear everybody speak, if that's okay. And before Sean starts, does anyone need a little 3x5 card? We were hoping that everyone would jot down what you hope to learn today. And so I'll present some of these cards. And that way, it could turn into a burning question that we could present to some of our panelists. So, thank you.
And we now pose a challenge to Sean. She finished with 15 seconds left. she's giving you her 15 seconds.
Well, I'm going to try to not do 10 minutes because I think it's really important to have two-way dialogue at the end. So, and not, I just want to not have to talk for her. But Marianne called me and asked me to participate in this and wanted me to kind of step back for a minute from my direct role and talk a little bit more about the sustainability component of Gleaning. And so I thought I would first of all recognize one fairly new report. It was released in 2021 by the Federal Department of Environmental Protection. That report, and if anybody's interested in it, I'll send it to Marianne so that it can get sent to you. It's a fairly lengthy document that was released in November 2021. It's called From Farm to Kitchen, the Environmental Impacts of U.S. Food Waste. And there's some really important information in there. And I thought I would, so first of all, before I get into some of the data there, there's a couple of other reports. There's a 2020 census that's done by American Associations of Gleaning Organizations. Some of you probably have seen that report. And it's sort of looked at, among other things, some Pennsylvania-focused gleaning organizations. So there's a lot of really important data and information out there. But for me personally, I am a faculty member in the Department of Geography and Earth Sciences at Shippensburg University. My background is, my educational background is in geology and ocean science. So the last couple of weeks I've been really exhausted watching these storms and hurricanes, and you know, the need for food for those impacted by Helene and now Milton, and is going to be tremendous. So the work that we're doing here in central Pennsylvania, south central Pennsylvania, is so critical. But if we can ever find it in our way or our networks to be able to support the food needs of those you know, further south, you know, incredibly appreciate those efforts. And it's very difficult and challenging to get food from here to there. We realize that, but there's a lot of interest and a lot of people who we can connect to that. But I'll talk about that later. In my role at Shippensburg, in the Center for Land Use and Sustainability, about 12 years ago, a group of students from Philadelphia said, hey, we've never grown anything. We don't know what that looks like. And so they approached the university for a space to begin growing. And like anything, they were directed to the student union. It's got to be a club or an organization. They had to make a formal request. They needed an advisor. Dr. Cornell, would you be willing to be our advisor? Okay, sure, what's involved? Well, here I am 11 years later, and a lot of effort and activities have gone into it. At the same time that they came forward and said, we want to learn how to grow, Shippensburg Produce and Outreach started a campaign called Grow a Row for SPO, and that's what launched us. And we have we just finished our 11th season, and each year we've been adding a little bit more. Now, we're not the kind of Dickinson College model. We're not a Wilson College model where we have a CSA. We're a small scale. We're actively growing on less than an acre. We have been working on a riparian buffer, what's called a multifunctional riparian buffer that was originally a drained farm field ditch. We restored that, and as of July 1st, that stream now has Class A trout stream status, which is really exciting. And so we're growing both for community as well as for biodiversity. So that's a different model than many sort of university farms or campus farms. We do a lot with hugelculture, traditional growing methods, experiments, right? So students like to learn about things like biochar, the impact of increasing soil carbon, right? So we're doing a tremendous amount of experimentation. So it's, again, student-driven kinds of work. But we, like many organizations, you know, struggle for volunteers, especially in the summertime when many of our students are obviously out and doing other work. So it becomes a challenge for us, but we're working through those things. So anyway, let me step back and my personal background growing up. I grew up on a dairy farm in upstate New York. My grandfather was very influential in my development. His statement used to be, as a farmer, my job is not to grow animals. Our job is to grow soil. If you grow soil and you care for the soil, everything else will fall into place. My brothers and I and my cousins, we always planted food and vegetables, whether it's in my grandmother's very large garden, my mother's garden. But we also used to do something really interesting. Our Franklin County 4-H and this is Franklin County, New York, not Franklin County, Pennsylvania. They used to run a large sweet corn program at the county fair. Most of that was gleaned from our farm and then neighbor program, and most of that was gleaned and put together by young people. So I've had a background in that work, and so it was a no-brainer for me to kind of encourage students to grow and learn how to grow, especially when our students come from Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, where they've not really ever seen what it takes to grow something. But let me sort of scale back and think about the problem of food waste for a minute. So here in Pennsylvania, in Franklin County, Shippensburg area, number one, we have a very high rate of food insecurity. But in our region, as well as nationally, depending on the report that you look at from 2020, as far back as 2000, we're throwing away between 38 and 45% of food having never left the farm field. Right? That's a big percentage. When we look at once that food is making its way through the food system, an additional 40%, sometimes more than that, is actually thrown away after it hits the grocer, hits the market, and makes it home. Food waste is a significant issue. And in terms of numbers, I just want to share some numbers with you. So in the United States, that food waste amounts to 8% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. Okay? That's 4.4 gigatons of carbon dioxide per year going into the atmosphere from our food waste. Put that into perspective, if we took a look at all of the greenhouse gas emissions from every country, right? China, US, if greenhouse gas emissions from food waste were a country, it would be number 3. Right? It would be number 3 if you consider the full impact of the food that we produce, but then don't consume, that we waste, that goes to the greenhouse. If you wanted to take a look at the land equivalent of the food that's wasted, it's equal to take all of California and take all of New York State and set that aside, because that's what we're growing and then throwing away. Okay? That's a big number. Now, that food that goes wasted, let me talk a little bit. So that's 140 million acres, by the way. Right? That's what essentially we're growing on and then throwing away. We're talking about 5.9 trillion gallons of blue water. Right? And in some of these places where water is already a scarcity, right, we're putting water and throwing it away. Okay? That's 778 million pounds of pesticides. That's 14 billion pounds of fertilizer. Okay? So these are some significant issues that need to be addressed. The UN, United Nations, estimates that we're going to be, by the year 2050, okay, we're going to be at 9.3 billion people. We're not going to be able to feed that population. We're not feeding our population today. If we could reduce the amount of food waste by gleaning and working with our food systems, our supply chains, to take that food that we're throwing away, we can hit that goal of feeding those people. Okay, the United States has a goal of feeding, I forget the number, but we're trying to increase the number of people by the year 2030. We're not going to hit the goal at the rate that we're going. So we really have to rely on all of you and the folks and the things that we're doing now and increase efficiencies to be able to, stop that. Now, one last thing I'm going to mention is the farmers. Pennsylvania, well, first of all, there's a federal law that allows farmers to donate their food, right? And liability aside, right, this is a great thing for them. unless there's gross negligence involved, right, in that there's no harm can come back to the farmer for donating. And Pennsylvania is one of, I think, 12 states that allow farmers to receive tax exemption, right, and capitalize on the benefit of their donations, right? And that's a significant thing. But yet farmers are still reticent, right, to allow these processes to move forward. And so we're working very diligently, and many of these organizations know full well what's involved in working with our farmers to get into their fields, to help them take advantage of that wasted food. So I'll be quiet now, but I'll take some more questions later for sure.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Glenn Franklin. I've been the project chair since January of 2009. Before that, when I was at my church board, I was a board member, and I decided that we should take up a collection of food for our local food bank. Because after being in Vietnam and seeing the poor people in the country, and different times when I was on a fire base, we took food to trash out and dumped it in the landfill. And there'd just be, 50, 60 people there from the village digging through our trash to find something to eat. And they just pick something up and eat it right there out of the landfill. And that really touched my heart. So when I was on the church board, it made me think about the poor people and what we could do, a little bit of something to help them. So I've been doing that since 2002. So then when I got started with Project Share, and I found out they went cleaning, I wanted to be a part of that. And so I went out with them, and pretty much every time they went, I went with them. And some of the people started calling me Mr. Gleam because I was always gleaming. So anyway, I saw the advantages of it for the people at least. The people got free food, where, if they couldn't afford it, that way they had something to eat. I was a little bit confused when I first started because when I thought of gleaning, I thought of the Bible where God told the farmers to leave food in the field for the poor to pick. So I expected the people, the recipients that got the food to be the ones that would go out with Project Share to glean food for themselves, basically. But it wasn't like that. And then I got to thinking, well, a lot of people who are poor, or elderly, or have kids or whatever, they can't go and do it themselves. So we, the volunteers, would go and do it for them. And it seemed like a really great idea. And after a few years of being with Project Share, at that time when I first got going, they had youth groups come in. And they'd be, for like 6 weeks, they'd have youth groups. So I would take one of Project Share trucks and take a youth group on a Wednesday morning, and they'd go out and pick food. And they were from all over the country, from Las Vegas, Nevada, different places, and they never saw how a tomato grows. They'd never been in the field, and we'd always let them take something if they wanted one. You can take a watermelon with you. And they were just shocked that they could just take a watermelon home with them. Because everything you get, you got to go to the store and buy it, So it was amazing working with all these younger kids from all over the country and seeing, what they've been through. So then after that, I wondered why Project Share wouldn't go more often. They only went one night a week, Monday night, through September, and then they started on Saturday morning. So I thought there was so much food out there. So I decided that that would explode. I kind of heard about them, and I'm like, well, they could probably use some of that food too. So I have a Jeep and a trailer, and I can only carry like 2 bins of anything at one time, where Project Share has the trucks, they have the equipment, And they're very generous in letting me borrow whatever I need pretty much to pick stuff and take it to these other food banks. So I started that in 2015, bringing stuff to Stowe. At that time, they just had a little door like a man door where we had to pass everything in down the line, one watermelon at a time. And finally, they put a garage door in the back where I can just back in and they can lift it off with their lid. So in 2017, I started with the Big Spring Food Bank. So I'm like, well, you know, they're local and I really want to do something for them too. The only problem with that was the fact that they do once a month, which is the last Monday of the month. And they wanted their food at 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, which is kind of tough if you're at church to try to get home, load up everything you have, take it in there, and like to get something to eat beforehand. Or if I had a mission board or something at church, I'd have to miss the mission board meeting, so I got that food there on time. But for me, that was a priority. The food was more important than the mission board meeting because there's other people in the mission board meeting that could handle it. They didn't actually need me all the time. So then last year, my wife had put a picture on some corn I picked from Big Food. I put it on Facebook or everything Newville, one of the two. And the lady contacted my wife and said, how do I get some of that free food? She says, here's my husband's phone number. Call him. I'm like, thanks, son. Just what he needed, more work. Well, anyhow, I met with the lady, and there was a woman that I graduated with. I haven't seen her since we graduated. So now I've been with Paul Pack for the past 2 years, gleaning for them also. So mostly I've done it by myself, other than when I'm with Project Share, because I always go to Project Share. And it's come to a point that I meet with all the farmers, so I know where the food is, and I let Project Share know, you know, what they want. They, you know, maybe all you have is corn, and you know, so you have to go here. So that's basically how I got the name of the ambassador, because I deal with the farmers all year long, not just in the summer for a couple of months' time. I think Steve's the one that gave me that name, the ambassador to the farmers. We had a lot of great years together. So Project Share has, you know, a lot bigger scale than what I do. So they have the advantage where they can keep food in their cooler if they want to pick it Monday. They can keep it all week or whatever. Whereas I have no place to keep it. I don't have a cooler. So I have to be precise on when I go to pick it. Like for fall packs, I pick Thursday, and they want it before 7 o'clock Friday morning. So I have no place to keep it. Sometimes I'll bring stuff in gloves into my house if it's real hot outside in the air conditioning, and then get up early and load it all up the next morning and take it in so that they have it. But as far as this year, has definitely been a change. I told Lisa it was going to be a surprise, and this is a surprise. For 15 years, there was so much food out there, it was just ridiculous. You couldn't possibly get it all. But 2024, the farms that we deal with, I deal with 8 farms, and there's 5 major farms and then 3 other farms I visit from time to time. But it changed drastically in a lot of ways. The first thing was the greenhouses. They didn't have tomatoes or food in them. They all had flowers. Flowers for Mother's Day, Easter, and what have you. So till Gleaning rolled around basically the beginning of July, all we had to pick was sweet corn. Now I like sweet corn, but usually we have a change of pace. We could get cucumbers or zucchinis or something like that, but no one planted any of that. So it was all sweet corn until about the end of July. And because it's been so hot, the crops came really fast this year. The cantaloupes, watermelon, they all came about the same time. But with the sweet corn that we picked, we only had 2 farms plant what they normally plant. Normally other years, they planted 8 rows of corn, and their fields were anywhere from 600 to 1,100 feet long. And when we would glean an 8-row field with Project Share, we would get maybe 2.5 bins of sweet corn. Whereas this year, the price at market was so good, and the fact that they planted less, we were lucky to get 2 bins. Cantaloupes, we only had 3 farmers that planted cantaloupes, so there weren't that many cantaloupes. I think Project Share only picked like 5 bins of cantaloupes, whereas last year the farmers gave me 9 bins. Watermelons, usually they pick watermelons 30, 40 count, which means 30 watermelons to a bin or 45 to a bin. This year, the price was so good they were picking 60 count watermelons, which are watermelons we would normally pick. So if they took 4 bins of 60 count off the field, there's 230 watermelons that we didn't have to pick. And we got much smaller watermelons. Plus there were a lot more people planted orange and yellow watermelons this year instead of the normal red, but there was still plenty of watermelons. But I can see already that next year it's going to be the same. It was basically Project Share. I lined them up with 1 farm, 9 out of 11 weeks, because he planted his normal planting. It didn't pay for Project Share to go take sweet corn if there's only 2 rows of corn. We'd have to go to 3 or 4 different farms just to get a bin of corn. But still, my cousin and I worked together the last 2 years, and we've been averaging just over 50,000 pounds that we've donated, gifts, and put together food banks. And I'm not sure how many. I know Steve's last year we got like 150,000 pounds last year. So it's really changed. So that was a surprise to me. It's a surprise that they really cut back on the growing.
Okay, my name is Steve Kuhn, and I'm sitting here next to Glenn, and I'm thinking it's only appropriate that he would go before me, because he would be the ambassador of Gleaning that was out there finding farms. What he didn't share with you that I found out today for the first time was Glenn always makes sure that he treats the farmers with a lot of respect and dignity, and just really takes care of them. Goes to the kids' birthday parties, goes to any function that the families invite him to, and he's just right there with them as one of the family members, takes them hunting and just enjoys their company. And when we have blueberries come in here, Glenn would buy like 5 pounds of blueberries out of his own wallet for every family and share blueberries, because he said, well, they don't grow blueberries. So he took care of them. It was just really amazing. Well, what I found out today, he has a little angle that I didn't realize about. He carries treats to give the kids, and probably the blueberries too. And I always thought, that is just so special. He's like, these kids come running from way all over the place to get these treats that Glenn brings them. Well, he told me today that they're going to be future farmers, and he's going to count on them for produce. So the farmers really love him. So I was so blessed to have Glenn as a teammate. And without that help, we would have never got 150,000 pounds. Just a little bit of backstory on myself. If you're from Carlisle, you probably know this, but I was started out as a YMCA Youth and Outreach Director. And one of the things I was responsible for was summer camp. But the other thing that I didn't know I was responsible for was I taught a program, facilitated a program called Adventure-Based Education. And I worked with 3 school districts, and I worked with emotional support students. So 29 years ago, they sent me away for training on how to build teams. And so I went away to different states and came back with some knowledge on how to build teams through facilitating teamwork. And I spent 18 years at the Y working with Carlisle, Big Spring, and Shippensburg school districts in this program. And when the opportunity came for a job at Project Share, one of the reasons I wanted to come to Project Share was Project Share, in my mind, and it still is, it was like a place where volunteerism is just celebrated. There was just so much volunteerism happening at Project Share. And with my background, I just felt my next season of my life would be with Project Share, building teams. So I got here to Project Share, and Elaine Livis was here at the time, and she quickly informed me that my first team building experience was I'm going to build a building, the farm stand at Penn Street. And I was going to be responsible for getting volunteers to build this huge building. And I'm not a contractor, but I know people. So through connections and through community generosity, we built what is known as the farm stand down on Penn Street, Lincoln and Pitt, Street. And that became the hub for our farm stand for distributing vegetables, fruits and vegetables, and for food insecurity in the neighborhood, and just being a part of a dynamic neighborhood that just really needs a lot of care and attention. So that's kind of my backstory of how I became involved with Project Share. But one thing that Natalie touched on a little earlier was about passion. And a good program, a good Gleaning program is going to have passion involved somewhere or other. And as you could hear from Glenn's story about going to Vietnam and his heart, where his passion came from, where it welled up from, that passion was always shared with our gleaners as we went out into the fields. Glenn would tell that story over and over and over, and the people were just mesmerized that, hey, this is a big undertaking. What we're doing here is important to the community. And so passion really played a big part in that. When I learned that early on when I was at the YMCA, I would take the kids, emotional support students from the high school, and some of these kids were tough. They were a handful. And we would take them out on service trips, and I'd take them to the St. Francis Soup Kitchen down in Harrisburg, and we would stand across the counter and serve meals. And then afterwards, we would debrief and talk about that experience. And they would share how, and every once in a while, some of them would say, I was here as a family member. Or I was, this meant, I can't believe that something like this, that people are so, having food insecurity so much that they come here every day for lunch. And they just come with their clothes on their backs, and a lot of them don't have homes. And it was really influential to me to see that kind of passion develop in the kids that were serving for that day. And so I kind of took that along with me when I came to Project Share, in whether it was building the farm stand or whether it was Gleaning, to develop a team of volunteers that would also have that passion to serve and to continue to ignite a program. When I first came here to Project Share, we were meeting out front every Monday. We would go out gleaning during the summer, and there'd be like 5 people show up. I'd be like, we're going to pick a cornfield with 5 people? Although Glenn does that by himself with his brother. I found later on that we were just being wimps, I guess. I don't know, but that was a lot of work. And I remember going to this farm over Cross Keys, and they had planted it just for us. And so it wasn't gleaning. And we get over there, and there's corn everywhere, and there's 5 people. And I'm like, we're going to let 80% of this here, because we can't pick this much corn. And so the program started from that 30,000 pounds, 25,000 pound, and it just escalated throughout the tenure that I was here at Project Share, to the point where on one of my apple trips over to Adams County, we had over 100 people show up. Volunteers show up to pick apples. And I think on that particular day, we brought back 12 bins of apples. And that's the big cardboard things. And so the next problem with that is, okay, if I'm going to bring back 12 bins of apples, what do we do with 12 bins of apples? Okay, and so we had to start being really creative in finding sources to take the produce and make sure it got out to the people that we would share it with. I remember picking watermelons, and we would invite different organizations to have a special gleaning session with us, and community aid brought their staff and volunteers out. We picked watermelons. So now we've got all these watermelons on an extra day of gleaning, plus we had probably watermelons and cantaloupes on Monday. So we asked community aid if we could set up out in front of their building. So we took skids of watermelons and sat in front of community aid, and we put a little sticker on there with a thank you from Project Share. Could you, and then we put a website thing, so could you take a picture of you enjoying this with your family and send it back to Joe Closa, so that we could share with the pickers somebody family enjoying their watermelon. So you had to be creative. Like we would, summer lunches, we had a site in Mount Holly where we would take a bin of watermelons and cantaloupes down there, and as each person came through to get their children's lunches for the week or for the day, we would throw a watermelon and cantaloupe in, or we'd go to Mount Holly Food Bank. So we would, if it was a holiday, we would set watermelons out front here and say to our donors, thank you for supporting Project Share. Just come by and pick up a watermelon and enjoy it for the weekend. Rather than allowing them to end up in waste, as was shared earlier. It was quite the job to get rid of 130, 150,000 pounds of produce. And I think that as you develop a program, you got to keep that in mind. And but I think there's a lot of ways to continue to find sources to get rid of produce. One of the other things that was kind of unique and neat with my gleaning experiences was I was asked, and with the team building aspect that I was gifted with and blessed with, I was asked to go out to the Bowling Springs football team, and they had 3 groups. They had the backs, the linemen, and some other group. And so I met with him and I ran through team building for a morning, each group individually for 3 weeks. And then I took them all out gleaning. But they contacted their social worker, or their school guidance counselors, and they got the free lunch list and all the families in the school district that would are in need of some help for food insecurity. So when the football team got back from the field, they were greeted by families from the community waiting for their water. So it was, it's just really moving to have them included, to be able to have them see what their work for that day was going to go towards. Donnie Nichter from Dickinson would bring his cross-country team in, and we would go out in the field, and they would just run these watermelons and cantaloupes and corn. They would just run them through the field. And Dickinson College came one time, and I took them out gleaning, and they were like, yeah, I asked somebody to explain how, if they ever pick corn, they could share with somebody else how they do it. And they go, well, I go to the store and I pull a thing back, and I look at the kernel to see if it's full, and I pick that ear. And I'm like, no, we're going into the field. So we got to the field, and they're like, do I have to go in the field? Like, do we go in there? There's bugs and stuff in there. I'm like, you can't pick it from the outside. You gotta go in. So it was quite the journey that I went through. I am now retired, but I am still working with at-risk youth and still doing service, and hoping to continue to lead trips and be a part of Gleaning in the future. Thank you.
now we can start the conversation. Can everyone hear me as I project? Because I want to make sure that our panel can pass the mic, if that's okay. So we do have some questions that we've gathered from some of you who written those down on the 3x5 cards. But before we go to those, we'd like to give you all an opportunity to ask your own burning questions and maybe ask some of our panelists to elaborate on things that they didn't quite get to share because I held up the 2-minute warning sign. So we'll go ahead, if you can project as best as you can so everyone can hear your question clearly. We invite our participants to ask questions. And Chris.
So first of all, thank each and every one of you for your presence here today, but also for your support to SPO and the Shippensburg community. Each of you has directly impacted not only our volunteers, but the clients that come to us each week. I wanted to ask a question that has two parts. All of y'all have addressed each part, but I wonder if you could maybe dive down a little bit further. Regarding the available land, the farms available to do gleaning, is there any way to entice them, increase the education campaign, make it more appealing? It seems that the mechanisms to cover the cost that they're providing to glean that they would be taking to market, it seems like those mechanisms are in place. Are there other steps that can be taken, not so much at a policy level, but from a local demand point of view? And the second part is volunteers. Everybody struggles with volunteers. What are your views on, and I think Steve, you might have, Steve and Natalie might have some pretty unique insight into this. Have you seen an ebb and flow of volunteers over the years? Are there things, messages to the volunteer population to bring them in to do gleaning? And do you see volunteers who come in to glean stay with that organization to do other aspects of volunteering?
Well, I'll try to take the first question. And there's a couple of research papers that have come out working with farmers, interviewing them, both those who participate in gleaning programs and those that don't, right? And those are sort of sociological approaches. And so what we basically know is that, and this kind of comes into something that Glenn was mentioning, this is a pretty complex issue, right? This year, right, you saw changes in what farmers were planting. Some of that's driven by our climate change, right? Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania, the climate models suggest that we're gonna get wetter. So wetter springs, but drier summers. And that's gonna have a direct impact on what's grown outdoors and the kinds of things that our farmers are gonna be able to produce a financial surplus from, right? And so moving into cut flowers and things like that that's where their bottom line economically is coming from now. So are we going to continue to see those trends? Yes, the answer is yes. So we've got to work with farmers to maybe change a little bit about what they're planting and how they're planting based on those climate factors. But from the federal level, there's also some, right, so there's crop insurance. And so a lot of farmers take advantage of crop insurance, but they don't know, and certainly it's not well communicated to them, that if they receive crop insurance on a failed crop, then they can still have a 501c3 organization glean from that wasted crop. So economically, they couldn't get out there and pay the labor and pay for all the resources right, because they've received an insurance distribution for that. But they don't know, and it's not communicated to them that they can still donate it through a 501c3 for gleaning purposes. And that's huge. And so that communication has to happen with our farmers. Yeah, and so just in general, I think a lot of what Glenn does is, right, that building that communication. It's not, most farmers are so busy, right? Their days are 60, 70 hours a week, 80 hours a week, right? And they don't have time to slow down to have a conversation with you. So it's that little bit of candy here for the kids that's bringing them a watermelon, that's bringing them 5 pounds of blueberries, right? That's the hook, you know, and it's that cultivating that relationship, pardon the pun, over time that really matters. And we're so, you know, busy, right, as organizations, and we're always responding kind of last minute, that it takes that a concerted effort by a concerted, you know, group of people to develop those relationships with our farmers and help them understand what is available to them in terms of financial benefits. So the research reports basically say that once the farmers know that they can do a tax incentive, that they can receive crop insurance and donate that food, they're much more willing to do that. Part 2, about volunteers.
The question about volunteers, I think you have to build the base, and you have to be consistent. I think that the consistency, I wasn't around this year to have the lack of crops that maybe would cancel a trip. Usually my canceled trips would be because of thunderstorms and rain. But you have to, if you're consistent and you build groups of volunteers, they'll continue to keep coming. And if you have the passion, you tell a story, they'll continue to keep coming. And they'll build on themselves after a while. And you especially if you're working like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Brownies, church groups, college groups, but then you end up with a group of people who just are, that want to just show up and glean. And we actually had, it was kind of a neat situation. We had this young group of volunteers that were not married. And they formed a group where they would go out for supper after they gleaned. And they would email each other, and they formed a group upon themselves, and actually a couple got married out of that group. And they started coming as a married couple. So if you can develop the volunteers, do they, depending on where they are in their life, will depend on whether or not they can volunteer further. If they have children and the gleaning's in the evening and they're at school during the day or they're working, then they'll probably not have much involvement with your daytime operation. But if they're retired, we have a couple who was coming to glean, and now they're both retired. And now I don't know if they're still gleaning, but they're in here working and volunteer all the time. So time commitment is what drives whether or not they can volunteer further.
I'd just like to say that for Project Share this year, this has been the worst year for volunteers. We averaged about 10 volunteers, whereas other years we had 20 to 30 until the college came back, and then we had, you know, like the cross-country team, 40 people show up. But that was just the last end of it.
I will try to quickly add on. There's definitely been an ebb and flow over the years. I know COVID definitely impacted and decreased our number of volunteers. I came in after COVID, so I'm still trying to pick up the pieces. I know previous coordinators and myself have gone to churches and just told them about us, as well as like Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, Line Club, donated the money to fund our walk-in. So there's like definitely outlooks that can be sought to get volunteers. I will say every year Gettysburg College sends a bunch of students. Do they necessarily want to be there? No, not really. But you always will get that one or two that see that impact and that will come back throughout the school year and get their friends involved. And then it is always very beautiful to see the people who are benefiting from our produce stand, and then later in life when they can give back, they always want to, because they themselves felt that impact and want to give back to the other families in their community, to kind of say thank you and to stay involved.
Anybody else questions? Ourselves.
All right, so twofold. One is a comment when the kind gentleman mentioned volunteers. I happen to think, and I shared this recently in another forum, that we might have to reframe even that word volunteer. because we know that Generation Z and Generation Alpha and the other generations that are here, they connect with mission. And so go from volunteer to missional associate or something like that, because it's sending a different message. Like, hey, I'm part of a mission. I'm not getting dragged here. So that's just one thing. But then two, I guess, how do we engage individuals from urban spaces who just might be like, oh, Gleaning sounds cool. Like, how do we engage them? Because I barely had a backyard growing up in West Philly, but Gleaning has always interested me. When I was in college, we would go to Panera and say, hey, can we get your leftover bread? And we would give it to Beacon Clinic and stuff like that in Harrisburg. And so my question is, how do we engage maybe the youth or other missional-minded people from urban spaces, or even some rural spaces where farming it might not even be a thing? How do we engage them in this whole Gleaning process?
Yeah, I think that's an amazing question and insight, because obviously there's a large population of people that are not connected to agriculture and the problems, right, that we see in rural, Pennsylvania and rural America. So that's an important question. One of the things that I'll say is I want to recognize the Department of Agriculture and Secretary Redding, because through their programming recently, right, we've begun doing a number of things at the Pennsylvania Farm Show that highlight and then also grant organizations, from urban areas, right, and so these are projects that involve school groups, but also community organizations and community-supported agriculture, block gardens, things like that. That's significant, and we need to just make sure that more communities are aware that those grant dollars are out there from the Department of Agriculture. And I participate, the Center for Land Use and Sustainability participates every year at the Farm Show in an area, it's called Ask a Farmer. And everybody sort of thinks about the farmer as being, right, that person with a giant tractor, that person with a big plow, right? But we're trying to change the face of that, right? Because not everybody is that as a farmer, right? It might be, that person who's growing in a balcony, food box, right? That might be somebody who's, got 15 5-gallon pails, and they're growing, tomatoes for them and their neighbors. So we want to make sure that we do change that face. You mentioned, maybe we should be using the term volunteers. Thinking about what a farmer is and what a farm looks like also needs to be challenged in a way. And I'll, just simply say that it takes, folks in a municipal area to start asking for spaces, right? There's a lot of blighted properties in areas where there's open spaces but nothing happening there. And if there's individuals that want to get together and start by putting some raised beds and getting a donation of soil and compost, right? And then from there they'll grow, literally, they'll grow. And I think that's a huge part of challenging what it means to be a farmer and how to address food issues. So that's what I would say.
Thank you.
So you really got me thinking about the urban aspect of it. Glenn touched a little bit on working with students from out of different cities and places. It was called a program called YouthWorks. And they came in from Baltimore and Philadelphia and all over the place, and we would take them out gleaning. And it was really a special situation for them to go out. And I saw what you were describing, where kids that had never been in a farm, let alone pick crops on a farm, had that experience. But I think that intentionality is where you have to start with that. Being intentional to come up with a program to do that. Maybe it's like a YouthWorks program where Emma, sets up a program where she's intentional about contacting an ambassador like Glenn in the Harrisburg School District, or in the Harrisburg community, or in the Central Dauphin, or wherever, down in that area, and asking and providing a special gleaning trip for students to come up out of the school district during the day to fulfill a mission trip into the field, and then When we're talking about taking the food, what to do with that extra food, that would be a great opportunity to send it along back with them. And you don't gain anything at Project Share by extra produce, but then again, you're feeding a larger community, looking at it larger. That's the only thing, I mean, off the cuff, that's the only thing I could think about how to expand that. Yes?
So I think just kind of going off of what Dr. Taylor said, you brought up some really great points. Something that I just continue to hear over and over again is that there's all this food and food waste, but we're not reaching the Alice families who don't know that maybe this food might be available to them. What are we doing as a collective to try to get that information out? Because I know that there are lots of times where even my own family will come short on food, and I don't know about any of this, and I've been living here for 4 years. I'm definitely in the system, but nobody's told me. So how do we find out the information that you're saying if we're not connected, or we might be part of your population increase as my family is? So how are we getting that information into the hands of the people that actually need to know this information? That's number one. But number two, understanding that families like my own can't go into the farm show because we can't afford it. So yeah, you can say, yeah, we're going to be out at the farm show, but my family can't afford to go there, and I can't imagine that I'm the only one that comes from that perspective. So how do I find out that these things are available to my family, but I can't attend the places where people tend to go? That's my question.
I will just say, in my experience with the Gleaning Project, we often go to different events hosted by the library or certain free public events. I know there was just one, Better Together in Shippensburg, that I unfortunately could not attend, but within my organization, try to attend as many of those events. Or at the farmers market, there's often a tabling opportunity, and just promoting our produce stand. I guess it is hard because you want to promote to volunteers, and those are a different demographic than those who are getting the food. A lot of times our volunteers are retired, and sometimes they're retired and they don't have a lot of income, or sometimes they're retired and they do have a lot of income and time. So balancing, it is very challenging to balance how to get our message across, and I'm always looking for more opportunities. I know being a part of the Food Policy Council gives me the opportunity to meet with organizations that I typically don't, and to share just that little information, and then they can spread it to their organization. I think encouraging conversations such as this, and yeah, there clearly isn't a solution yet, so we have to work together to find that solution.
One of the things that and maybe this is a partnership for better health, we have lots of organizations that have their small databases, right? Their volunteer database, right? Their client database, and we're all very, concerned and worried about information sharing, security of our clients' information. But there really does need to be an integration across our organizations where our communication strategies can circumvent, I don't want to say circumvent, but basically go above, our concern in order to be able to reach our potential clients. So that the idea of having a database, because we can do till we're blue in the face, the social media posts. We can put up things on our Facebook pages and our Instagram pages, and we're trying, right? But our time and energy is often focused on the day-to-day logistics. And so if there was an entity or an organization that could ensure the security of our clients' privileged information, but also still be able to reach out. I hate to say it, but I hate robocalls. But if there was a way for our systems to be able to hey, we got watermelons, right? Hey, we've got cantaloupes, we've got whatever. And if that could go out and it could reach the clients and the people who need it. The other thing that we have a challenge with is reaching our schools, because that's another way for us to communicate with families is through our schools. And Steve mentioned, right, the free and reduced lunch families. It would be amazing if we had the ability to connect, with those groups of folks as well. But right now we just don't have communication system that enables that. And that would be amazing if we could work on that problem, that challenge. And I say Partnership for Better Health because it's an entity that works across a lot of avenues. And this is really, this is a health crisis, number one, right? I mean, healthy food is medicine, and accessing that should not be helter-skelter.
I'll just say, this is a plug for us. If you aren't aware that the Cumberland County Food System Alliance, in partnership with the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank, they really brought the idea to us. They're able to create a database now of, and it's a live calendar under our resource tab, which we're sharing out. We're in the process of rolling that out right now. There's a paper version, there's an online calendar that all of Cumberland County in real-time data. Again, we thank the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank for bringing it to us. It was started, I think, in Union and Snyder County was the first model, but Laura Whitaker Escobar, who's on our leadership council, and Natalie Leon, when she was working with the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank, brought it, set it up. And so we're starting to hit some of those populations and getting the word out, but it doesn't solve the problem of we have water problems. The only other thing I wanted to not forget to mention, if you're looking for, and it's a little off topic, but it relates to the urban gardening. We were fortunate to go down to the Bridge Eco Village, which is repurposing the old, which school is Bishop McDevitt School. Giant Company came in and did the bleacher garden. If you've not seen that or had interactions with Gary Gilliam, we're very fortunate to do that this summer. You can repurpose buildings and locations. I invite you to get on or just talk to me. I can send you photos. I can get your contact information. But we also visited the Hill Garden, which is also using food as medicine. Their prescriptions coming out from, I told you what the organization was now, I can't remember. It's the medical group that serves kind of the Allison Hill population.
Is it Hamilton?
Hamilton Health Center does the prescriptions for food as medicine so that people can shop for produce with the prescription. So there's a lot of good programs, and now I think we're starting to see, and we are very happy to partner with the Adams County Food Policy Council. I think they're starting to build this information sharing county to county. It's really important for us to continue to have events. What we are planning, this was sort of, I'm just going to say it, we're hoping to have a networking event in the spring, which is all we do is just bring people into Cumberland County and do just networking. Not that these topics aren't important, but the value in this is getting everybody talking and meeting and knowing one another. So we're hoping to launch that in the spring. You said there was one more question that somebody had a hand up right there.
Yeah, you guys had mentioned the SPO Grower Row and working with farmers on specifically growing a row for you. So this is sort of like a combination of everything we've been talking about, right? Our climate change. So I was wondering, have there been conversations with farmers about growing different rows of foods that are adapting to our climate as it's changing, and if any of those are more culturally familiar foods for the populations that we're serving?
Yeah, that's a really good thing. I think, interestingly enough, I think that the folks who are really kind of exploring that tremendously are actually our Amish and Mennonite farmers. They're adapting, I think pretty well. They're doing a lot of research on what is growing, better. Obviously, they spend a lot more time diversifying what they grow from any year anyway. The large commercial farmers, they typically, grow just a couple of types of crops, but our Amish and Mennonite folks, they're already kind of experimenting, and they also grow a lot more varieties of things, right? So there's a lot of knowledge within that community, and so when you go to their roadside stands, or when you go, like we have the produce auction in Shippensburg, right? When you go there, you really do see quite a large variety of food, culturally, diverse foods that are showing up there. Now, those are not necessarily making it into, the broader markets, but I think that's one place to look, is what are they growing and how are they diversifying? Certainly as we grow indoors and in greenhouses and high tunnels, we're beginning to see some of those things. But again, the cost of growing inside versus outside is significantly different. So, they're harvesting more of those in seeing the return that we would, but again, that's a good thing, right? And ultimately, in terms of the environment. So I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on that one, but yeah, I mean, I think it's going to take time, and I certainly know that certain universities are experimenting as well. Penn State is doing a little bit of that work, especially within our stone fruit and apple. Right, there are certainly varieties that are more tolerant of the stress conditions and that kind of thing. So it's happening. It's maybe not happening in the communities where you're getting information about it.
Culturally appropriate, and I don't want to call you out, Harley, but does the Painted Turtle Farm culturally?
We do.
Your head too?
Yeah. So the Painted Turtle Farm is the community garden and farm on Gettysburg College's campus, and we have not only the large plot that we do our CSAs out of and the hoop house that we do CSAs out of, but we have 26 community plots that are all different. 26 Latinx families are assigned to each of those plots, and they get to pick all of their produce, and we listen to what they want at the end of each year and bring those back. So a lot of like chile de árbol, chile guajillo, and things that are like not what you would think of growing here. They also take advantage a lot of the indigenous plants that grow here that we are like, oh, those are actually weeds. No, they're actually verdolagas that they use to cook the frites that they put in tamales. If you never had them, it's all the time recommend. But don't let them lie to you if they put chile de árbol in them because they're very expensive. So we don't have like that surplus that's always making it over to Gleaning, but it is a space where people can choose to grow those culturally appropriate foods.
That's one of the challenges that we face with our conferences, not having different culture. Yeah. So it's a tool to attract issues. As you could tell, Marianne and I were commiserating because we were like, this is kind of what we wanted to happen organically. So we're kind of going to do some shifting, I think, with the agenda a little bit. Do you want to?
Yeah, so I think we'll take a quick break because we're going to go ahead and we'll go ahead and do the small group. So we were going to have everybody just rotate. We think maybe a 15-minute small group if anybody's interested. We have relationship building, who is going to be Sean. Volunteer management, Steve's going to handle that. Glenn is going to help handle the other sources of food recovery, and education is going to be with Natalie. And we're just going to set those up. Everybody could just take like a 5-minute break and go ahead and grab some snacks. We'll just set them up on tables, spend about 10 or